continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Aleph and Meseches Shabbos. This is Shabbos Daf 105a. The Gemara here is in the middle of a brisa. The brisa is talking about a case where a person has intention to write one letter, v'alu biyado shtayim, and instead he writes two letters, and the brisa says chayiv, you're chayiv in such a case. So the Gemara asks v'atnan pater, but the Mishnah says you're pater. It's a contradiction. Gemara answers lokash, it's not difficult. Had de boy ziyune, had de lo boy ziyune. And we'll take a look at Rashi to see the question and the answer. Rashi here says, V'yalu biyado shtayim, hainu nami miskavin lichtov ches, v'chosav shnei zayin. And Rashi understands the brisa means a person had intention to write the letter ches, and instead he left a space between the top of the ches, and it ended up as two zayins. So haditanan pater, the Mishnah which says pater, de boy ziyune shadayin srichos roshe hazaynim lezaynon betagin shalahen. In that case of the Mishnah, you still needed to put the crowns on the top of the zayin. Shazaynin srichos gimel ziyunin yamin usmol ulamalo kedarmina bemenachos. It says in Menachos that the zayin requires three crowns, the right, the left, and on top, and that's what was forgotten. But if you would write proper zayins, that is what the Bryce is talking about. In such a case, you would be chayiv. The Mishnah then said, Kosev os achas nutrikon. Let's say he writes one letter and puts a little slash or something similar on top to make it as though it's a full word. Rabbi Yoshua ben Beseira mechayiv v'chachamim poter. Rabbi Yoshua ben Beseira says chayiv in that case, and the chachamim say poter. Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, minayin l'loshon nutrikon min Torah. Where do we see this idea of nutrikon in the Torah? Basically, the idea of acronyms where letters are Rashi Tevos, they stand for certain words. Shenemar, like it says, Ki Av Hamon Goyim Nesaticho. It says, talking about Avram Avinu, he was Av Hamon Goyim, he's the father of multitudes of nations. Av Nesaticho L'Umos, so now we're going to read it as Rashi Tevos. You are a father for nations, that's the Aleph. Bachar Nesaticho L'Umos, you were chosen amongst the nations. So Klal Yisrael is the father of nations, chosen amongst the nations. Hamon, and Hamon, what does that stand for? Chaviv Nesaticha b'umos, so the hey is interchanged with a ches. It means you're beloved amongst the nations. Melech nesaticha l'umos, the mem stands for king. You're a king amongst the nations. Vasik nesaticha b'umos, you're distinguished among the nations. Nemo nesaticha l'umos, you're trusted among the nations. These are all praises of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan Didei Amar, Rabbi Yochanan in his own name, Rabbi Yochanan himself says, not in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, he says Anochi notrikon. The word Anochi, the first word, the Aseres Hadibros, is also Netrikon. Ono nashi ksivis Yehavis, means I wrote the Torah and I gave the Torah. Rabbanan Amri, Amira Ne'imo ksiva Yehiva, they say that it means a pleasant statement was written and given. The Torah is like a pleasant statement, or pleasant statements. Ika di Amri, some people say Anochi Lamafrei, that you should read the Anochi as a Rashi Tevos backwards. Yehiva ksiva ne'emonin amore. It's given, it's written, and that which it says is, trusted, is reliable, is Neman. The Gemara now continues, Devei Rabbi Nassan, Amri, Devei Rabbi Nassan says, Ki yorat haderech lenegdi. Yorat haderech lenegdi is, this is talking about in the Parsha of Bilam. It says, taking a look over here in the Pasuk, Vayomer Elav Malach Hashem, Al Mahi Kiso Es Ason Chazeh Shalosh Regalim. The Malach asks Bilam, why'd you hit your donkey 3 times? Malach is saying that he's the one that got in the way of the donkey. So what does that stand for? Yara Ro'asanatza. It means that the animal was afraid, the donkey was afraid of seeing the Malach Hashem, and it saw and it turned to the side, and that's what the Malach Hashem is explaining to Bilam. Devei Rabbi Yishmael, Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael teach the following: Rashi Tevos Carmel, Carmole, it means like a full pillow. Rashi here explains Carmel, Gabi Minchas HaOmer Ksiv, Geres Carmel, Shemevia Kashilacha, Ba'od Shazer Nefuach V'Akarshal Kash Molehim. And what it means is that when we're talking about the grain, when you bring the grain for the Minchas HaOmer, it has to be like a full pillow. It has to be moist and full. And when it's kind of bloated in that way, that's when you bring this Minchas HaOmer. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says, V'hu kilalani klola nimretzas. That's a pasuk in Melachim. Talks about Shimi ben Gera, who was David HaMelech talked about the fact that Shimi ben Gera cursed him. So it says klola nimretzas nutrikon. That's also Rashi Tevos. Noefhu Moavihu Rotseachu Tsoru Toevahu. Means to say that Shimi ben Gera is an adulterer. He's from Moab. He's a murderer. He's an enemy. He's an abomination. That's all in nutrikon. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak also has an atrikon man edaber uman etztadach. What can we say? How can we make ourselves righteous? This is talking about Yehuda is saying. Pasuk says Vayomer Yehuda man nomar laadoni man edaber uman etztadach v'Elokim motza es avon avodecha hinenu avodim laadoni gam anachnu gam asher nimtza hagavia biyadu. This is Yehuda talking to Yosef and saying we're guilty and don't blame Binyamin for stealing the gavia. So what does it mean nitztadik? It stands for Nechonim Anachnu, Tzadikim Anachnu, Tahorim Anachnu, Dakim Anachnu, Kedoshim Anachnu. All ideas that we are innocent, we're righteous, we're pure, we're holy. And that's the idea of Nitzdadak. He's saying to Yosef that they were innocent of this crime. The Mishnah now continues, HaKosev Beis Osios. If somebody writes two letters, B'shtei Halomos, in two separate Halomos, Achas Shacharis ve'achas bein harbaim. Let's say he writes one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Rabbi Gamliel mechayev v'chachamim pochid. Rabbi Gamliel says yechayev and the chachamim say potter. And the Gemara explains what the issue is. B'mai kamiflagi. What's the machlokas? Rabbi Gamliel savar ein yedil achatzi shir. The fact that you knew in between, knowledge doesn't mean anything when it's chatzi shir. So if you only wrote one letter, it's not the full shir of ksiva on Shabbos. The knowledge in between doesn't break up the action, and it can be joined together. It can be mitzdarif with the second letter, and then he's chayev for writing. The Rabbanon disagree. The Rabbanon say yesh yediyah lachatzi shir. The idea is meaningful, and it can be machalik. It can divide up the action, and therefore you really do not have a single full malacha. You have one action that's chatzi shir in the morning, and then you have another action that's chatzi shir in the afternoon. And according to the Rabbanon, they're not mitzdarif, so you are potter. Hadron alach habona. That is the end of Parak Habona. We're going to continue now in Parak Ha'oreg. Before we continue, again, please see the description box below. If you enjoy the videos in this channel, you can see different ways to support this channel in the description box below. The Mishnah now says, Rabbi Eliezer says, Ha'oreg shlosha chutin betchila. When we're talking about the malach of weaving, what is the shear for weaving? So Rabbi Eliezer says it's 3 strings. You do if you weave 3 strings when you're starting a garment, or v'achas al ha'oreg. Let's say you already have a woven garment and you're adding to it. So even just one thread in that case is going to be considered weaving in both those scenarios, whether you're weaving three threads betchila or one thread that you're adding to a woven garment, you're chayiv in all these cases. The Chachamim say bein betchila, bein besof. It doesn't matter whether you're at the beginning of making a garment, at the end, it's always the same shear. Shiuro beis chutin, the shear is always going to be 2 chutin. Ha'osa shtei batei nirin benirin. Let's say a person is making 2 heddle eyes, and the heddle, we're going to talk about exactly what this looked like, but basically it has to do with setting up the loom. Bekiros, benafa, bekvara, these are all different kinds of ways of setting up the loom. Whether it's bekiros, we'll see what that is. Benafa, kvara, those are different kinds of sieves. Uvasal, a basket. All these different ways of arranging your weaving. You're chayiv as long as you do 2 of them. V'atofer based tfiros, also if somebody stitches 2 stitches, he's chayiv for tfira on Shabbos. V'akorei al menas litfor based tfiros, and also if somebody tears on condition to stitch 2 stitches on Shabbos, he is chayiv. So Rashi here says on the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer asa lefrushe shir oreg. Rabbi Eliezer's point over here is to tell you how much, what is the shear, what's the amount of oreg you have to do to be chayiv. Shamanu b'avos malachas to tanan hasam shnei chutin. It says there are 2 threads. B'tchila imzu tchila sarigaso shel beged. What it means is if in the beginning of making a beged, then the shear is shlosha chutin. V'achas al oreg and mosifu al oreg shiura ba'achas to mitzdarif mashar. If he's just adding to something which was already woven, then the shear is just going to be 1 thread. Batei nirin. Rashi here says shenasan beis chutin shel shasi benira shakorin litzish. What they used to have was they used to, when they were setting up the warp, basically it was loops. It was threads that were loops. What you're basically trying to do is you want to, if you were going to weave in the longest way possible, you would take 1 thread and put it over the thread, then under the next thread, then over the next thread, then under the next thread, go up and down. That would take a very long process. So what they would do is instead they would take all the odd numbered threads or all the even numbered threads. The point is they would take every other thread and they would attach it to the batei nirin. They would attach it to something which basically lifted up all the every other thread, either all the odd numbered threads or all the even numbered threads, and then you would be able to shoot what was called the weft thread straight through, and it would make the weaving process much faster. Nowadays they have more advanced ways of doing it where you can lift very quickly and it threads very quickly. But here they had some kind of arrangement where you had these 2 chutin, 2 threads that were going to hold up every other thread in this nir, which was basically the heddle. Benir no v'kiros mefarish beGemara. The exact setup will be explained in the Gemara. Benafa uvekvara. What is this? These are different kinds of sieves or then baskets. Hanach lav nirin mamish el misharsher umarkiv chut echad shel erev b'shasim el mata v'echad mel mata umamid hashsi bahem ketikno. In other words, these were also other devices, not exactly what Rashi would understand as the typical nir, but it was other kinds of devices which you used to lift up whichever strings needed to be lifted up in order to assist you with the weaving process. We don't necessarily know exactly how these things looked, because we don't weave like this nowadays, but they all essentially accomplished the same basic mission. The Gemara now says, Kiyasa Rabbi Yitzchak, when Rabbi Yitzchak came, Tani, he taught Shtayim. Instead of having the word Shalosh in the beginning, he had Shtayim. Rashi here says, Kiyasa Rabbi Yitzchak, Tani Masnis and Hachi, Rabbi Lozer Omer Ha'oreg Beis Chuten B'tchila. It was, according to Rabbi Lozer, according to this opinion, it was just 2 threads if you're starting a garment. According to Rabbi Yitzchak's approach, Rabbi Eliezer only argues on the Chachamim when it comes to adding on to a garment that's already woven, not when it comes to starting a garment from scratch. So the Gemara says, Va'anon tanan gimel, what's going on? Our Mishnah says you do 3 strings, and he's saying 2 strings. Seems like a contradiction. Gemara says, Lo kash, it's actually not difficult. It depends if it's thicker strings or thinner strings. Amri lo lahaigisa, v'amri lo lahaigisa, and you could say it in different directions. It's possible that the thicker strings require a larger shear. There's a logic to that. It's possible that the thinner strings require a larger shear. There's a logic to that as well. Amri lo lahaigisa alime talosa lo sasri tre sasri. You could say it in the direction that the thicker strings, so weaving 3 of them is not going to come apart. 2 is going to come apart. Ketine tre nami lo sasri. But if they're thinner, you could even do 2. That's not going to come apart, so the shear is smaller for thinner. V'amri lo lahaigis, you can go the other direction. Ketine talosa yedie. When it comes to thin strings, you can actually see what's going on with 3 of them. There's something chashav there. There's something significant. Tre lo yedie, but you can't with its 2. You can't even see it. You can't recognize it. Alime, when they're thicker strings, tre nami yedie, then you can even recognize it's significant with 2, and therefore, according to that logic, by thicker strings, the shear would actually be smaller. So it can go in both directions. Tanya, we learned in a brayso, ore gimel chutin b'tchila v'yachar ala orek chayev. It says if you weave 3 strings in the beginning of a garment, or 1 when you add on to a garment, you're chayev. The Chachamim say bein b'tchila, bein b'sof, doesn't matter beginning or end. Shiuran beis chutin, the shear is always 2. Uvesafa beis chutin berochav gimel batei nirin. Now when it comes to the border, the hem of a garment, it's going to be 2 strings with the thickness of 3 of these heddle eyes. Ha lemazeh dome. What is this comparable to? Why is that a shear? Dome laorik tziltzil katan. It's like basically weaving a thin belt. That's the minimum thing that's the minimum width of an item that you would ever weave, and therefore that's the shear. Beis chutin barochav laorik tziltzil katan. Beis chutin barochav gimel batinin. That's the shear. 2 strings in the width of 3 heddle eyes. That's the shear of a tziltzil katan. So the Gemara now says, the first part of this brayso that we just learned said that the shear when you're beginning a garment is 3 chutin, and when you're adding on to a garment is 1. Stomach Rabbi Lozer, the Gemara points out that first opinion in the brayso seems to be like Rabbi Lozer in our Mishnah. Tanya Yidach, we learned in another brayso, if somebody weaves 2 threads, either alagas means something, a large item that was already woven, or ala imra is the border of a garment, meaning the beginning of a garment. Doesn't matter if you're finishing a garment, starting a garment, it's going to be 2 threads. Rabbi Lozer Omer afilu echad. No, Rabbi Lozer says if you're adding onto a garment, it's even 1 thread. Uvesafa shnei chutin berochav shlosha batei nirin chayev. Similar to what we said before, if you're doing it on the hem of a garment, it's going to be 2 chutin, 2 strings, by the width of 3 heddle eyes. Halamaza doma, what's this comparable to? Laorik tziltzil katan, to somebody who weaves a small belt, like we said before. Shnei chutin al rochav gimel batanir. And again, the same shear, 2 threads, according to the width of 3 heddle eyes. V'ha'oreg beis chutin al agas ve'alim rechayev. Now the brayso just said before that if you do 2 threads, doesn't matter beginning or end of a garment, you're chayev. Stoma k'rabbanan. The Gemara notes that brayso seems to follow the rabbanan, that the shear is always 2 threads worth, and it doesn't matter whether you're starting or finishing a garment. The Mishnah then said, Osa beis batei nirin v'chula, which seem to be setting up the warp threads. Again, these are the threads that are being lifted up, every odd number, every even numbered thread. When you're setting those up, if you set up 2 of them, benirin, then you're chayev. What does that mean exactly? My benirin, what does it mean you're setting it up benirin? Amar Abaye says, Tarti bebatei nira. You have 2 of them that you're setting up in the heddle eye. V'chada benirin, 1 in the nir itself. Now, there's a number of explanations of what exactly this means, but we'll read Rashi and take for granted the way Rashi is explaining it. Tarti bebate nira v'chada benira beis pa'amim markiv l'chut shel shasi bebas nira. So you have the warp thread. So two of them you're going to be putting into the heddle eyes again, which you're setting up your whole warp. Dahainu shekorin litza chas beniru pam shlishas markivo al chut hanira shekorin litza. So there was this heddle was some kind of a string, again with loops, that you were setting up all these threads. So you're going to somehow wrap it around that string after you set it up into two heddle eyes. Hamurkav alakana, and that's attached to a rod. There seems to be some kind of a rod attached to a string that had a bunch of loops. So basically Rashi's saying they used to put the warp threads through two of the batei nirin and then over the chut hanira, over the string itself. The Gemara now continues, Bekirus, what's kirus? The Gemara says, my Bekirus, what's Bekirus? Amarav matzuvisa. Rav says matzuvisa. Rashi here explains matzuvisa. B'yirias garden ha'organ beregel hu v'korin limish v'hi b'makam ha'kona ha'olav v'yored b'yirias arigas nashim shekorin prisha. Seems to be some kind of a pedal system where in order to lift up every other of the warp threads, instead of lifting it up with your hand, you lifted it up using your foot with some kind of a pedal. That's what Rashi seems to be describing. V'atover based tfiros. Then the Mishnah said if you stitch two stitches. So the Gemara says hatanina b'avos malachos v'atover based tfiros. It says in the avos malachos that you have to stitch two stitches. What's being added over here? Rashi says hatanina le b'avos malachos v'lamali lemahader v'lemisnei hacha. Why are we learning it over here? Hoa v'lo lefrushi b'midias. If you're not adding anything. Bishlama oreg misham plukso shtei batei nirin lashmin b'nirin u'v'kirus u'v'nafel v'kvar v'sal delotani lahasam. I understand why weaving is in this Mishnah. There's a whole bunch of things that are added in this Mishnah to weaving, but nothing's being added to the case of tefira. So what's going on over here? So the Gemara says mishum de kaboy lemisna seifa, because it's really the end of the Mishnah that we're concerned about. That's the addition. It says v'hakoreya almanas litfor beis tfiros. It says if you tear in order to stitch up two stitches, you're chayiv. So therefore, because of that, katani nami hatofer v'hakoreya. That's why we learn both stitching and tearing. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Hanami tanina b'avos malachas. Tearing is also in the avos malachas. So that's not adding anything either. Elamisham de kaboy lemisna seif. Now the real reason we're having it is because in the seif of this Mishnah, we're going to learn hakoreya b'chamaso v'almeso. We're going to have cases of tearing either in anger or you're tearing because somebody died. Misham hachi katani hatofer shtei tfiros. So we start from hatofer shtei tfiros, but our real goal is to get to this Mishnah about koreya b'chamaso v'almeso. V'koreya manas litfor shtei tfiros. You tear in order to stitch two stitches. Hechi mashkachas la. How can this be found? And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kufhei Amud Beis.